As far as timetable, there is no timetable as far as I know. And it is a setback. You know, you want your best player to be here, and there is a short window, as you've alluded to. As I said yesterday, we're working as if this is the 6th to the 23rd, so there is some time, but, you know, it is a setback. I mean, you have to be honest and understand that this is a setback, not having one of the best players in the NBA here.
How challenging is it? How frustrating is it for your star player not to be practicing with you when you have such a short period before the season starts?
I'm here to talk about PJ Tucker. Anything outside of that?
First of all, I thought that was a 7-Up, and I was like, oh, that's old school, but it was Gatorade. Chris Broussard is joining us now. Broussard, good morning. We should mention all this on the fact that, you know, we're just 2 weeks away, really, from the start of the season. My question to you would be, you know, do the Rockets have to really consider dealing Harden before this situation becomes untenable now?
Well, Jen, if you're asking me, do they have to trade him before the season starts, I would say no. In the words of Kevin Durant and Silas, that may give you a better idea of what you want back in a trade for James Harden. Then what happens in Brooklyn? What if Kyrie Irving gets hurt? We know he's injury prone. What if it doesn't gel and they look bad? Are they now willing to give up more? What if it does gel and they look terrific and look like, you know what, we shouldn't mess with this. We don't need James Harden. What about Philadelphia? What if Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid don't play well under Doc Rivers? Does Simmons become available at the trade deadline? Does Golden State get involved? Like, there's so many other things that could happen that right now you just need to sit tight, grit your teeth, and it's going to be tough, but you need to fight through this and don't give in just yet.
Around the NBA player is different than the business around the NFL player. You know, if you really look at it, when you look at the contracts, the guaranteed money, it's just different. The culture around how the NFL player, the NBA player approaches these situations is different. You can say this is unprecedented for an NBA player to hold out. We see this every single year in the National Football League. However, let's talk about legacy. There's a lot to unpack there. Don't have time to do all of that right now. But let's talk about legacy. 20 years from now, let's say he holds out. He gets exactly what he wants. He goes on to Brooklyn. He wins the championship. He has his ring. Will we be talking about James Harden's holdout? Probably not.
No.
Now, let's fast forward again. Let's stick to the 20-year script. He doesn't hold out. He goes and be the ultimate pro. He stays in Houston. He doesn't win the championship. 20 years from now, you know what we're going to be talking about? Oh, James Harden, one of the greatest players to never win a championship. He's right there alongside of Charles Barkley. That's what we're going to be talking about, legacy. Yep. Players hear this.
That's right.
We talk about this all the time. Legacy, legacy, legacy. We break down KD. We break down LeBron. We break down MJ. We break down Kobe. Legacy, legacy, legacy. So what is this player supposed to do? So what I would say is, you know, Charles Barkley, he is the face of it in the NBA. He made his move at 29, and they said it was 2 years too late. Our buddy Goodwill over at Yahoo Sports said it was 2 years too late. James Harden is 31. Nick, what do you want him to do?
Be a professional, and is what I want him to do. And I want to give a little context here. I don't think there's been anyone on national television that has supported James Harden more than me over the last 5 years. I really believe that. I think he's the 26th greatest player in the history of this great league. I think he is somehow underrated amongst the media as far as how hard it is to do what he does. And I'm a guy who has always supported players versus management. I am here to see the players. I am not here to see the owners or the franchises or the I am here for the players. So it is almost impossible to get me on management's side. But Harden might have done it. And Harden might also have found himself getting his fellow players on management side. I'm not a journalist, but I occasionally practice a little journalism. And I knew where I wanted to go with this Harden thing last night. So I called a couple agents, texted a couple players. And guess what? Not a single one of them supported him. Because this isn't how professionals act. One of the quotes that was said to me that I think resonates was, big difference between being a professional athlete and being a professional. And in the midst of a pandemic, going on a coast-to-coast tour of clubs, giving Lil Baby $100,000 and being at Dre's till 5 in the morning, while your team is at practice with their brand new head coach. Pardon, Brandon?
That's not the discussion. That's not the discussion. And the first thing I'm always going to do is I'm always going to put myself in the player's perspective, because that is the seat that I occupy. That is where my area of expertise come in. So you're talking about it's not professional. Was it professional when Eli Manning, he told the San Diego Chargers I'm not coming to play for you? Was it professional there? Was it professional the way Tom Brady got out of New England? Was it professional when you can go across the board in the NBA and it's not so it was professional for other guys to hold out and to try to gain leverage?
No. Brandon,
so now you're calling it unprofessional?
Tom Brady, yes. Tom Brady was a free agent.
I'm using a bunch of scenarios.
Was a free agent
I'm using a bunch of scenarios.
Okay,
this started 2 years.
This does not happen,
That whole
Brandon.
Tom Brady thing started 2 years.
Brandon, let me explain.
The Tom Brady thing started 2 years before he was a free agent. He put his house on the market.
Okay.
There was a lot of rumblings back and forth.
That's fine.
This is a big conversation because this dynamic between media and player, it needs to be talked about. Because what we always say is that the player is unprofessional. The player, he needs to go and shut his mouth and go play. Well, and I know the business around the NBA is different. Okay, contracts, guaranteed money. It's different in the NFL. But these owners, they have all the leverage. They can do whatever they want with a player. They can trade, do sign and trades. They can do all these other things. We need to have a fair conversation around the players.
And Brandon, with respect, if you let me finish, we will. You can check my record. I argue all of the points you're making all the time. But that does not mean that every situation the player is right. And Harden has somehow found a way to cross my Rubicon, which is 10 miles further than most.
I agree with that.
Saying this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. To essentially just hold his own personal wildcat strike in the midst of all of this and then to flaunt it on social media is ridiculous. And I don't think, Wilds, he has as much leverage as he thinks. He absolutely can force his way out of Houston. And Broussard, he can talk about the culture in Houston and leak that. The culture in Houston is James Harden. He's the single most empowered player by an organization across the league. But he can force his way out. But he's not going to be able to pick his destination. And so he's playing a dangerous game here, and I am telling you, it is not something where other players across the league are cheering him on. Other players across the league are rolling their eyes at him because it's James Harden once again doing things differently than even the best players in the league themselves do it, Broussard.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick, for the most part. And here's something you left out as well. The collective bargaining agreement will be up in a couple years, 2022, 23. The owners will take it out on the players for this, for stuff like this.
That is correct.
The owners always win, but they're going to go harder at the players because of things like this. Now, Brandon made some interesting points, and I don't like at all what Harden's doing. I feel the same way as you, Nick, and what the players and agents are saying. However, there does come a time when, like, if Harden plays out this contract, goes somewhere else, and ultimately wins a championship, he may be at a stage of his career where it doesn't matter anymore. Like, when Gary Payton won his championship in Miami, does that change his legacy at all? You know, he was a role player there. So that's where, and Brandon mentioned 20 years after Harden wins a championship elsewhere, will we be thinking of this holdout? How about 2 years from then? I mean, no, Anthony Davis. Nobody's thinking of the mess that he made in New Orleans while it wasn't
But
quite
he
this
never
bad.
didn't show up for work. You can demand a
yes,
trade.
You're right.
But you got to show up for
I
work.
agree. I agree. But I'm saying it still was ugly. It wasn't this ugly, but it was
You know
ugly.
what's interesting
and
to
nobody
me?
cares.
You know what's interesting to me though, Chris? This is what's interesting to me. The general manager and the head coach is gone. And you know what they said? We're going to go our separate ways. So somehow they sat at the table and they figured out it wasn't a great fit for the general manager, who's now in Philly, and also the head coach, who's now in Brooklyn. So now a player stands up and say, it's
So
not
go
a good
sit at
fit.
the
And you know
table.
what we tell them? Come to work.
So go sit at
Come
the
to work.
table.
He did sit at the
No.
table. He told them, I don't want to play here.
No. So go sit at the table and try to work it out. Like D'Antoni's contract was up.